horsemanship comes into play above the riding. I don't care how much talent you have. If you don't have horsemanship, it goes out the door.
Whether you're preparing for competition or just want your horse to feel stronger and more balanced, fitness matters. But here's the problem. Most riders don't have a conditioning plan. Without the right approach, horses either lack the stamina to perform or break down from overtraining. Laine Ashker, a 5-star eventer, Grand Prix dressage rider, and advocate for equine fitness, is here to change that. She's conditioned top-level horses across disciplines and knows exactly what it takes to build strength, soundness, and resilience without second-guessing every ride. In this episode, she's breaking down the biggest conditioning mistakes riders make and how to fix them, how to tell if your horse is truly fit enough for the job, and the exact trot and canter set strategies she swears by. No matter your discipline or goals, this episode will give you the confidence and clarity to build a smarter, more effective fitness plan, one that keeps your horse strong, sound, and ready for anything.
Dear Horse World, it's Laine Ashker.
Lady, welcome to the Dear Horse World podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I want you to share a little bit of what we were just talking about, because the way you talk about it is so relatable.
What, you want me to talk about my amazing season so far?
Yes. Yeah. I think everyone needs to hear, I want everyone to hear what you just shared with me, because it was so refreshing to hear what your experience has been.
Okay. Well, let's rewind it. This is my second full season in Wellington. And for my full season, it's 2 months, right? I've got a huge barn back in Virginia that I kind of try to keep going and keep afloat while I come down here and spend some quote unquote me time. So last year was all great, hunky-dory. To be fair, I didn't do a lot of showing. I did a lot of schooling shows with my eventing horse. And I finished the season at Global 12 with Zeppelin doing I think I2. So that was kind of cool. This year, I had such a banner year last year. I think I came down with some, preconceived notions that I was going to kick ass and take names. And I've been so humbled. And it's just been one thing after the other. The trip was really long. Coming down, the horses traveled fairly well, but I could tell maybe they kind of got a little ulcery. So I was like, all right.
Also, everyone who's listening should know that Laney trucks her own horses.
I do. Yes. So I'm a strange to say, and no one would actually guess it, but a control freak. And I drive my horses. So my dad was really nice to fly out and to kind of ride shotgun with me, but it ended up being a 17-hour trip. And it was too long. So I'm going to split that going back home. But then when I landed, the horses were kind of on and off their feed. So I knew, okay, we got some ulcers we're dealing with. And then their hair fell off because it's Florida.
Because it's Florida.
I had cellulitis. It was just one thing after the other. I was also really sick with whatever the plague was that was, going around.
Yep.
And then Lottie had a really slight tummy ache that was kind of a little colicky. So that gave me a lot of stress. And I am probably like every other rider where my mood depends solely on my horse's well-being and if they're sound and if they're happy. And so nothing was going right. And I ended up Zeppelin then, because he had no hair on his back because he had lost the hair, I tried a different saddle pad, an Eco Gold Comatech that has the fluff underneath.
Yeah.
And that gave him a girth gall because then the saddle didn't fit well. And so it was just everything that I was doing, I couldn't do anything right, no matter how hard I was trying. And so I ended up going to the World Cup, and I had, actually the test really wasn't that bad, but I felt very unprepared because I hadn't been able to train. And I ended up finishing 8th, which I almost got eliminated for not showing up to the award ceremony, which I did. I just showed up late because I didn't think I made it. I had to rebraid my horse. And so luckily I got to do that. But then I ended up scratching because he just wasn't feeling right. And it was solely because his back was just on fire from lack of hair.
Yeah.
And so then, I go through all that, and I just was like, I think I was just trying too hard. And I think we when we come down here, or anytime we go, there's a pilgrimage somewhere to go train.
Yes.
You feel the need that time is of the essence and you got to train.
Dude, I have felt this on this road trip.
Yes.
It's so relatable.
Yes. And I know I think everybody kind of goes through that. And, we start training in Virginia to train down in Florida. So the horses are like basically feeling like they're in the middle of the season, right? Where you feel like you're going to get left behind, because you're trying to start the season off right. Yeah. And I kind of felt like, man, I need to take a beach day. Like I need to care a little less because the more I was trying, everything was going so wrong. Mm-hmm. And honestly, so like this has kind of been the first week that I feel like the hair's grown back, right? Everybody's fine. I'm fine. I actually did take my first beach day and I put on a swimming suit, which was a little scary because my blinding, I wear a lot of turtlenecks so I don't get the sun. So there was some blinding radiant skin out there. But
every horse girl can relate to
every
that.
horse girl can relate. But it was nice to sort of take a step back and sort of realize that like, it's sort of cliche to say that in these shows, we are kind of doing this for ourselves and everybody's on their own path, right? But you feel like everybody's watching you and people are like, oh, Zeppelin's Piaffe wasn't as good. I wonder what's going wrong. But honestly, no one remembers. No one really cares. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to kind of get in that fishbowl effect being down here in Wellington, probably the same a little bit in Ocala, but especially down here in Wellington when you've got a 5-star, you got 5 stars literally right across from each other in two different disciplines and the world's best. So you feel like, well, I want to be the world's best one day, so I got to work harder. And it's not really always like that. I think if you sort of this week and my horses have sort of forced me to take a step back and take my birds on a bird walk and go to the beach and kind of enjoy Florida.
Take your birds on a bird walk?
I know. I knew you were going to say that. I have a bird backpack because I am a weird person. And I have birds, not dogs or cats. And I have a bird backpack that is SPF. And the birds, and it's like protects them from UV rays, and they have a little perch, and I put them in a backpack and I go everywhere with them.
Dude, you're a bird person. That's why I love you so much.
Yeah, I'm a bird person.
This is okay. Wait, first of all, that explains so much, right? In the best way, bird people. So did you know, I've been told that birds and horses have the same frequency. If you believe in frequency, that different animals and different things, like that horses and birds have the same frequency. And I'm gonna like send you some stuff about that.
I would love that.
The fact that you're a bird person doesn't actually surprise me. I know some really cool horsewomen who are also bird women.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I speak bird. I rescue birds. My 2 birds are my babies.
What kind of birds are they?
They're lovebirds.
Oh.
So, but my mom has cockatiels. We've had Parisian frill canaries. We used to go to birds at the bird show, take birds to a bird show. It's the best thing. You take the bird, you put the bird in the cage, you drop the cage off, you come back and you pick up the bird with the first place ribbon. It's like, that's the way to do it, man. Like so easy. It's so easy. And I'm like, wow, how did I get into horses, man? This is everything but easy. But yeah, I think, in sort of going back, I think taking that time to sort of, it's been a month and a few days and I've finally settled. Mm-hmm. I feel like my horses probably settled far more than I did. But when things were happening, I got so much anxiety and so much nerves from like, what am I doing wrong? I don't have like my normal routine down here. So yeah, I just, like I said, I think taking a step back has been probably the best thing for me and not trying to keep up with what I don't need to keep up with, So
yeah. I also think that what you're experiencing, like, God, I've felt that.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like Wellington isn't the only place in the horse world where it feels like a fishbowl. Because we go to places that are like really concentrated, full of like amazing trainers or amazing riders. Yeah. And everyone feels like the pressure, everyone feels like, and I don't know about everyone listening, but guys, like I have felt the same feeling, and I'm not showing in Wellington, but I felt like, oh, everyone's watching, everyone's being like, oh my God, what is Noelle doing? Right. What is she doing with her mirror? Why is she doing that? Whatever. Right. When in fact, everyone's super focused on their own stuff. Right. But it's hard not to feel that self-judgment. Mm-hmm. Yes. I feel like sometimes I wonder whether the horse world is a bit plagued with its own like special level of self-judgment, because we all seem so hard on ourselves all the time.
I think yes, to a certain extent, but okay, there's a few things that come to mind. I think the self-judgment is what drives people to be better. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a healthy amount, and I think that's part of being an elite athlete, right? Watching Kent Farrington win the past 2 5-stars, there's no way he's not going in tonight saying, God, can I win it a third time? But there's a way that he's saying it to make it, instead of saying it like, oh, I'm no good, I'm not going to. He's like, oh, those past 2 times I won it for a reason. Whereas right now I'm a little bit in the phase of like, if I used to, Al had a season where he won every advance, and I would go in and I'd be like, am I going to win? Like, how I've already had like 2 or 3 wins. How am I going to win the next one? And that's not like, it's learning how to like,
is that a winning mindset?
It's not a winning mindset. It's not a winning mindset. So I think the self-judgment is a good thing to a certain extent. I also think the self-judgment is good because what we do is with another animal, and it's very dangerous. And it's a real life thing. People can die, right? Horses can die. So I think where other sports, like there's no way Michael Phelps didn't have self-judgment of like, oh man, that was a nanosecond slower. I got to be better, right? But they don't have another living and breathing being where they're running and jumping obstacles or where it could step on you or kick you. So I think that is also a little bit of a way of self-reflection to be a better athlete, but also a better horse person and a safer one, right? I know for me, every time if I have like a really bad distance, I'm like, okay, you got to get it together, because not only does it put me in harm's way, but it also doesn't do anything for my confidence or my horse's confidence. So I think it's a double-edged sword there. I think you shouldn't, I think we have to always be honest with ourselves. But like I said, I think about Kent Farrington, who's a standout athlete, who is consistently producing results on also different horses, among other athletes, because being down here is so cool to watch the best of the best. That's why I come down here, being an eventer and a dressage rider. And to have Philip Dutton in the back door, to be able to have help from him, and just to have help from literally the best of all the industry. So it's a little easy to go like, oh, well, I'm not as good as them. But it's really, at the end of the day, I think some of that is okay. No, you're not good as them, but you've got to get better, and you can get better. So there is the next step of where you want to, put your eye on and reach that goal, or, have a realistic goal in mind, right? Because as many times, like my first time in the World Cup, I was like, I left my heart out in that arena and I got a 63.7, right? And I was like horrified because Zeppelin's never had a score that bad. But also, okay, cool. I'm going to come back to the 4-star at the end of March. And I'm not going to have a goal in mind to like have a better percentage, but it's my horse's second ever CDI. So, okay, think about that, Laney, whereas a lot of these horses have gone to the Olympics. Also, let's just try to go for a more confident round, right? What did you do that you didn't like? Okay, so his piaffe was not his best this last one. So my goal is to have a more relaxed piaffe, just kind of breaking it down. However, it's taken me 10 days to reflect on that to come to this point. When I wanted to like quit and I hated myself, like when I came out, I was pretty stoked. And of course the score, you see the score and you're like, oh, I suck actually. But it's not really about sucking. It's just about where you are and where your horse is, because like I said, it is the only sport where you compete with another living and breathing entity. So where I might be on one level, the horse might not be there yet. Or my horse might be on a level and I'm not there yet. And it's so hard to when you finally find equilibrium. Which is really hard to find. And even then,
and for a moment.
It's for a moment. Right. Jackie Brooks, I ride with her in the flat, and George Williams. But when I'm down here, because I get the pleasure of riding with George in Virginia. With Jackie for the 2 months I ride with her, and she said, the sport of dressage is not, okay, it's about harmony and all that stuff, but it's really about the fallout of balance, right? So the higher the level that you go, there's less time to recorrect the horse's balance, because everybody loses balance. The Lottie Fries, the Katrin Dufours, the Isabelle Verts, like they all lose balance, but they are able to attain it a lot quicker, right? And it really depends on the horse that they're on too. So like if they're on a greener horse, that might take them a little bit longer time. But the difference between going training level to Grand Prix is that Grand Prix has maybe the equivalent in the whole test of 3 seconds where you can get your horse's balance regained.
Whoa,
right?
Cool.
Because it's a monster of a test, or the special, right? Or your freestyle. Whereas first level, you've got a long side, or you've got a short side, or you've got a stretchy circle, like all these things to train your horse.
It makes me think of in eventing when you're on the cross country, it makes of like the places where you can breathe.
Exactly.
And as you get higher and higher, there's less places for you to
when
breathe.
You go 5-star, there's
and the same for Joe jumping.
Yes.
The higher you go,
Yes.
the less places in the course that you actually have a second to regroup.
Right. And that's what makes the best is if there was a test that never lost balance, it would be 100%. No one's ever achieved that to this day, right? People have been pretty damn close, but there's still a loss of balance. And that's what I have to think about, because as an event rider, I'm very naturally good at balancing the horse going cross country, right? Or else we'd fall over or jump.
Yeah.
And I have to be able to translate that to the dressage world, because there's no jumps. There's just movements, right? So, and it's a different type of horse. And so like, it's not about like kicking and pulling, or, you know, like I said, I don't have to do that in the cross because I have a jump that does that balancing for me.
Right.
And I have my position that does that balancing for me. And then I can also let my horse, if she wants to gallop a little bit lower, I can let her do that to get her breath back. But in dressage, I've got to use the corner as a jump, or the movement as the jump, or the posture as a jump. And that's just kind of, I'm still learning how to do that. I'm very much in the low stages of learning how to do that. So, and constantly humbled. So
that feels like a life's pursuit, though.
Yeah, I think
right?
so.
Because when you describe it like that, as a like someone who so deeply comes from the world of jumping, I think of that and I'm like, yeah, it's such a dynamic. And I was even having this really cool conversation with Henrik Gunnarsson yesterday about how the worlds are different, how the dressage world is different. He comes from the show jumping world like me. His wife is very much in the dressage world. So we were like, how the different worlds are, even psychologically, culturally, and the competition grounds in which you are measured. And when I watch a test, there's such small room for error. And what I feel more so a little bit in just the way that the dressage arena is set, like the little white fences, and they close it behind you when you go in, and it really does feel like the world is like watching.
Yes.
You know, even when I was watching, I was like, wow, it really feels like we're all watching. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that has, of course, you know, you have that element in show jumping, you have that element in eventing, but because it's, I don't know, there's something that feels different. Maybe just the way that the fences are, like maybe just the fact that the fence is like higher, and then there's more that there's it's either more intimate because there's like crowds really close, but even the Grand Prix arena here has like, it's quite fishbowl-y. Do you know what I mean? And I've even heard, like Henrik was saying yesterday, like there's horses that have come in that have gone to the Olympics and then they've gone to this dressage arena and they struggle.
Sure.
There's some element to me, and you can tell me if I'm totally off here, but like there's an element to dressage that just feels like and maybe it's because it's judged. Because it's,
I know what you're going to say.
Do you know what I mean? It's
say,
just like kind of tenser and more like, I feel like when I'm watching, I'm like, this is amazing to watch. Like watching some of the horses here, watching dressage done well is like a piaffe done like, oh, it's like so,
it's like a really good bite of a chocolate cake.
Yeah.
It's really, it feeds your brain and your happiness and your endorphins and all that stuff.
And yet there's an element that I can watch, and you can tell me if I'm way off here, but I'm watching the rider and I can almost see like they're trying to make it better. Like they're always trying to make it better.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that feels like as like a pursuit of horsemanship, like that pursuit that feels different.
It's a sport of perfection.
Yeah.
And to what you're saying, so I'm an eventer through and through. Grew up doing eventing. You know, I've made my, you know, any sort of notoriety has been in the eventing, and coming from that world, it's a lot more. And this is no shade on the dressage world, because I actually have got some great friends in the dressage world. I quite like it, but think about what dressage people do. It's about perfecting movements, right? Whereas eventing is about like, you know, it's okay. We've gotten a lot more into that, but you know, I'm gonna tell somebody how combination at 4AB rides, because it's about it's life and death type of deal.
Yeah.
The crowd, when you ride in Kentucky, or you ride at Fair Hill, or you ride at Blenheim, or you ride at Burley or Badminton, you jump a jump, people are cheering for you. No one's going like, oh God, you know, like maybe like, whoa, that was scrappy riding, but hell yeah, get on with it.
You survived.
Right? Yeah, freaking awesome, right? Whereas, and I feel a little bit of the crowd here, like, so I like the fishbowl effect. I, you know, did a little acting when I was young. I like people watching. I take that on as a person. That means that I can be motivator, someone that can inspire youth, but also adults too. So I like having that responsibility. I also like when I feel people are vibing with me. And the one thing that I've noticed, like, let's say, so my first World Cup was at Devon, and I had a horse named Atlas, and then Zeppi did it last year. And the crowd is like almost an eventing crowd. And I think because there's a lot of like eventing in that area, but they'll start like cheering while you're in the freestyle.
Nice.
And it feels, I told my mom when I came out of Devon last year, it's like it felt like I was in Kentucky galloping through the gallop lanes. Like the coolest thing would be when you're galloping in the gallop lanes and you just hear people go Laney, or go Al, go. Or,
oh, that must feel so cool.
You hear that and it just drives you.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I wish a little bit where dressage, and it's not, I don't think people want you screaming in the middle of their tests, but to feel like the crowd is more with you and wanting to see you succeed. And sometimes I feel like that fishbowl effect can make you feel like, oh, they're judging me. Like that's the first thing I thought when I came out. And I was like, oh God, that was not the 70 that I got at Devon. Oh. And it's, no, again, no one cares. But I think
it doesn't feel like no one cares.
It doesn't feel like that. And I feel like the horses do feel that because the riders feel that. And it's a very tenseness. And I think it's fun to have people bring in some different facets of horsemanship in dressage to make it less tense. Like the jumpers, like everybody's like, they'll go, or they'll kick their leg up, but the horse got through. We're all cheering for the clear round.
Totally.
Same with eventing. And I feel like dressage is missing that a little bit. I don't know. I'm not, an oracle to say how to get it done, but I do think it starts in the freestyles. And I could tell you every rider, unless they made an announcement, is going to get into people sort of like clapping in unison with their piaffe steps. And honestly, people can read the room. If the horse looks like it's getting tense, don't clap. But I do think people need to get behind that, and it will bring an air of more lightness and
like
less
celebration.
Tenseness. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we do this because we love horses, right? Yeah, we don't do this because we're making money. Like we do this because we like horses. Like I speak 3 languages. I could have been doing something that could have paid the bills, but I chose to do this, and I love doing this.
Yeah.
And I love training the horses from the get-go and to getting them to the highest level. So yeah, I just, like I said, I'm a total outsider. I bring the quarter marks to the dressage world. I also will be the only one cheering when I'm not in the freestyle, but I'm watching it. And I think that like, it would be nice. I think getting Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg involved was the best move that dressage could have ever done. Because it brings, people are not saying like, oh, look at this horse fancy prancing, oh, cool. Okay. There's, everybody's into it. If Snoop Dogg's into it, it must be good, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
I just think it sort of brings more people involved and seeing the beauty of the sport, because the sport is extremely beautiful.
It is. Like, it really is. And watching horses express in those movements, like watching the dressage movements, like I learned so much watching everyone yesterday. I watch and I'm like, wow, like those horses, the way that their body, the control and the power is like really something to be appreciated.
Yeah.
And so it's really exciting to hear that. I think there's the right kind of like change and shifts happening around, like how can we make this like a celebration of the horse? Because at the end of the day, like dressage, I think is such an expression. It should be like an expression, like a dance, right?
It's an art form.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly what it is. And I do see the shifts happening. I think there are shifts happening, and I think they're shifts for the better. And I think it's fun to sort of just get people more involved in seeing the beauty of it, rather than it being, the sport of kings. And that's for all horse sport, right?
Yeah.
And that's honestly what I love about eventing, because, I've ridden every kind of horse. I've ridden Cleveland Bays. I've ridden off the track thoroughbreds that literally were free off the track. And I think, and that have competed against at the biggest venues. And I think that people can identify with that, and people can get down with that. It's already expensive enough with a free horse, let alone buying $1 million horse in Europe.
Seriously.
So, and it's nice to see more of these breed classes that have like gypsy vanners. And am I going to ever ride a gypsy vanner? Probably not. I should never say never, but probably not. But it also brings people that love gypsy vanners that want to train their gypsy vanner to do the highest level that it can. There's nothing wrong with that, and go for it.
There was a mule in the UK.
Even better.
The UK, the first mule to ever do, was it intermediate?
I don't know. I do know there was a mule that did training level in
Yeah.
California.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, the lady, and I
It's
was
so
like,
cool.
yeah. And there's also Bishop Mule Days. Bishop, I don't know, where, California, I think, and they celebrate the mules there. And I didn't know it was a thing, and I did know it was a thing because I've grown up in California in the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know that, and I think that's awesome.
But making dressage accessible and like
Yeah.
inclusive, and
Yeah.
having horses like that,
Yeah.
also celebrating. Like I saw in Paris, there was a couple of the more traditional Baroque breeds
Yes.
that were there.
Yes.
And like, that's really cool. Like, I hope we really continue to support a variety or a diverse group of horses to come and perform at that level. Especially because of the classical, I would say like the classical foundation or the roots of dressage, right, I think are really interesting to a lot of us. You know what I mean? And so, yeah.
Well, and Vanilla Ice was there like 2-3 weeks ago for PJs. And it was my first time watching her freestyle. And it was just so damn good. I ride to Led Zeppelin because my horse's name is Zeppelin. And I just love my freestyle. And I feel like people really get behind it. So I can't wait to like perform it for everybody.
Yeah.
But PJs, when she came in, she's like, all right, stop. And you're like, this is going to be great. And then to have Vanilla Ice in the crowd, and he gave her ribbon, was like icing on the cake. And it was a Spanish horse, and that's so refreshing to see, because it's always, I ride a warm blood, so what am I talking about? But it's really nice to see different breeds also have success at the highest level amongst the world's best horses.
So for everyone who's listening who doesn't know PJs and the situation, paint the picture for us. What happened?
So this was her freestyle, I want to say like 3 weeks ago. It was, I don't know if it was a World Cup or a 4-star, probably was, I don't know, one of those two. But she has this horse called, I think his name is Vanilla. Is it Vanilla Ice or something along those lines?
And he's a Spanish horse.
It's a Spanish horse.
Very cool.
Stallion. It's like all neck. Mm-hmm. But it's like she's got it so trained, and she's got like a longevity with this horse. She's had to ride on this horse a long time, so she's trained it.
Cool.
And her freestyle, her musical cur, it's like it's got Vanilla Ice, Ice Ice Baby. It's got Cold as Ice. I think that's Foreigner.
Nice.
It's got a whole different compilation of, Icy and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And she just brought the house down. Like, and she nailed, every movement was nailed. Like, I was blown away. I hadn't seen it. And she ended up finishing, it was a pretty strong field, and she got like a 76%. And it was enough to finish third in the top 3. Mm-hmm. And amongst like really great horses, and this is a really great horse. And then just the icing on the cake, I was sitting in like the normal stands, but then I watched her get a ribbon, and Vanilla Ice comes out.
Oh my God.
They must have had a plan that he was going to come. I think he does live here, but like, how freaking cool is that to like bring the house down?
Yes.
Perform this singer's song for him on your horse, and a totally different interpretation, and the horse just nailed it. And it was just, I was really happy for her. I don't know her for at all, but I was like, yeah, you go, girl. That's freaking awesome.
It actually makes me, it's something I've never thought to ask.
Yeah.
Do you think people should ride their horses to music?
Absolutely. I always ride my horses to music.
Do you?
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, it's like, it would be weird if I didn't ride them to music.
And why?
Okay. Multitude of reasons. I ride my dressage horse to music. I listen to like a mixture. I listen to a lot of like classic rock, EDM, hip hop, but they all have a beat. So I really like if I'm doing like a canter work or tempies, I can count that beat. So
cool.
Because as a dressage rider, that's kind of all you do. Like I take dance lessons with my boyfriend, and he has a hard time, doing movements with the count. And I'm like, well, that's what I do for a living. So it's super easy for me to do. I might not do it very well, but I can do that. Mm-hmm. Another reason why, like today I did a canter set on Lottie. So I did a 20-minute trot, and then I did a 6-minute canter. And like the music that I had was very like chill. So I feel like it's calming. So whether she hears it or not, I think she probably does hear it. I think she also, if I have calming vibes, and she has calming vibes. Yeah. Or if I like play music before I head out to cross country, it's like, do, Eye of the Tiger. Like I put that onto my horse. Yes. And she feels that, and she's like, all right, we're going to go kick some ass, So I love music, but I'm a very musical person. So yeah.
Because I was thinking actually that would be like really, I've never thought of that before. Mm-hmm. I know, we on NF Plus, we have guided rides. You have some really cool guided rides on the platform where people can listen while they're riding. Yes. And I listen to music doing so many other things.
Yeah.
But dressage incorporates music
Yeah.
in a way that no other horse sport does, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And I never thought about, hey, like everybody could listen to music while they're flatting and like incorporate it into your work, your walk work, your trot work, your canter work.
Yep.
Which is so cool.
It's been fun making freestyles. This is my third freestyle I've made. And it's been fun. You know, I have someone that makes the freestyles, but to understand the beats per minute and how that goes with the canter and how that goes with the trot and the walk and blah, blah, blah. And also, I think for all other, you know, okay, the reasonings aside of like you want to listen to music or the count, blah, blah, I think it's also good. It's a little bit desensitizing because a lot of horses can be very sound aware.
Yes.
So I know that when I'm having a song that is like has a lot of bass to it or maybe extra treble or whatever, my horses will get used to that so that when I'm going around the ring, you know, and there's flags flapping, you know, I can still keep their attention. I don't want it to be a distraction. Quite the contrary. I want them to be comfortable in maybe an uncomfortable situation and trust me.
Yes.
So
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually supposed to be a No Stupid Questions episode, but I love how we just totally dove down that hole, that rabbit hole, because I also think it's really cool that you come from eventing and then you really like dabble and dive and participate in dressage. You know, like that to me there's not many riders.
It's very humbling. It's very humbling.
Yeah, but it probably makes you stronger in both, right?
Yeah, like for sure. Yeah. I think I was actually talking about this with Jackie the other day. So I think as event riders, our dressage is probably not the best. Like, you know, it's not going to be the perfect shoulder in. The horse is probably not all the way through. Also, having said that, the horses are fit to run 3 miles, you know, at, 25 miles an hour the next day. So there is a balance there. However, I think that being event riders, it actually gives us an upper hand as potential pure dressage riders because we know how to balance a horse while going super fast on cross country with not a lot of contact and when it has to get done so that you can go and do the coffin or do the head of the lake. Totally. And that's something that we do really naturally, but then you put us in a dressage ring and we feel like we've got to kick and pull. And that has been something that I've been overcoming and figuring out how to, like I said before, I don't have the jumps like in my brain help me, okay, for this jump I got to do this, for this jump I got to do this. Well, it's kind of like, okay, well, this movement I have to do this, but it's the same idea of being able to balance like and ride forward to the balance. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people that start in dressage that don't know how to gallop or don't know to go like from a coffin canter to, they don't have the feeling that we naturally have.
Yes.
And it's just about getting that confidence. So that's been something that Jackie has been very helpful. She's like, ride this pirouette canter like your coffin canter. Like it's punchy, it's leg on. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, damn, okay. So, because if I just think about pirouette canter or piaffe, I want to collect my horse and pull back. And that's not, it's collection is forward movement, right? And so I have to think about, like, I would never want to go and pull my horse to nothing to a sunken road. You know what I'm saying? I want to ride forward to that sunken road, but it's not a flat out gallop. So I know how to do that like naturally. So it's just about translating that to a dressage saddle and a double bridle and no jumps, and that's where like I feel the crossover has actually, now that I think about it that way, has been really helpful and beneficial in my, I'm not going to say shift to dressage, but also my path down dressage.
I love it. I love the emphasis of balance
and forward
motion, balance in the movements. And I think it's profound what you're talking about, using the corners and using the movements to find that balance. Laney, I think that's really something right there.
Now, I don't know if I can do it all the time, but I can keep telling myself that. So
but it's one thing to understand it. And that's, I think, what's so beautiful when I see riders. Like, I've learned in my journey in exploring more Western like and natural horsemanship in this like year-long road trip that we're on, Liberty, what I'm learning is doing more of the same thing doesn't necessarily make you better at that thing. That actually that some of the greatest horsemen and horsewomen that I've watched, that I've studied, that came before us, that are no longer with us, they were like whole horsemen or whole horsewomen. Like they did lots of other things. They tried different things. They did lots of cross training with their horses. They were out hacking, you know, in the UK. The reason why I feel like the UK produces so many great horsemen and so many great horsemen and horsewomen is because there's like this emphasis of hacking out and proprioception on different types of footing. And some people don't even have arenas, so they're riding out in grass fields on hills and doing hill work. And you know, like there's something to be said about like diversifying yourself, that yes, you might feel, and trust me, I am diving into liberty work, and you feel like a baby learning to walk. Like it's extremely humbling. And understanding a horse's point of balance, and I was talking about this with Casey, understanding a horse's point of balance on the ground. We were both talking about how like profound finding groundwork is for all the in saddle work. All of it contributes to your understanding. And so to understand it at least gives you a place, like at least you know where your destination is. I find a lot of the times when we're endeavoring to become better in the saddle or out of the saddle, sometimes you're like, what is my destination?
Yeah, you get lost.
You get lost. You're like, what is like my optimal, you know, what is like my optimal outcome? What is it? What will happen that will determine that I have arrived? And I think all the great horsemen and horsewomen will say that once you've gotten there, then you'll create a new
one. Yes.
Right? And so there has to be something more than just a particular outcome. There has to be a feeling. There has to be like some of the greatest, you know, like, oh, like you mean, okay, well, we'll do a shout out to Meta Larson here. Yeah. I love watching Meta ride. Yeah. And she'll come out and talk about, she put so much in perspective when she said, oh yeah, she's like, oh, I got like 3 really good strides there. I was really happy with those 3 strides down the long side. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. She's like, if I get 3 like in my canter work, like I'm so happy. And I'm like, wow, that puts it in perspective. Like we're all trying to find that feeling, but it's fleeting.
Yes, it is fleeting. But 3 strides is better than no strides. And then the next day you get for 4 strides. And then, you know, the next week you get 6 strides and so on and so forth.
And finding it, and that's like even coming back to this idea of like I'm starting to call it like whole horsemanship. Like what you learn on the ground, you find your horse's point of balance. I've actually learned more about how to put my horses in balance by watching them on the ground than I have in like, or as much as being in the saddle with them, because you then, and they have to move freely and move confidently, not in fear, to show you that.
To that point, so my best friend is Elisa Wallace, and she does a lot of the Mustang stuff at Liberty.
She's amazing.
She's a badass.
Yeah.
And
Elisa, we want you on the podcast, by the way. Shout out, girl.
Okay, we're gonna get her. We're gonna get her. She is it's so funny that we're best friends because we're so opposite, but I think that's what draws us both together, because I'm you know, the makeup wearer. I like to be in the front of the camera. She's like, I don't like the camera. I don't, you know, and she's like, you know, I call her a cowgirl because she's a horse whisperer. And so whenever I have a behavioral issue, I'll call her. But whenever she gets a horse in for training, if it's a horse that was stopping on cross country or having rails down, the first thing she does, I mean, she doesn't even know this horse. This is how she gets on her Mustangs. She's bareback. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so scared for you. But with the Mustang, she's done enough backing and stuff to trust to get on them. She does not use a saddle, but you know, getting in a horse that needs some confidence, she says, I go bareback, and I'll usually like end up just schooling them in a halter. So they have to learn to figure it out on their own. And I'm like, first of all, that takes some John Wayne balls. But second of all, that's such great intuition. That is a proper horse person, a horsewoman that puts her brain in the horse's brain and doesn't just make the horse go to what her training standpoint is, right? Yep. And I always am so in awe of how she does that. And I think that's really her work with the Mustangs that's taught her that.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because you don't just pull this thing out of the field and then, I mean, she can actually.
Well, Mustangs will be quite, I think a lot of people who work with Mustangs will say that they hold you to a whole different standard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like where warm bloods might be a little bit more forgiving,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
Mm-hmm.
you can use the analogy, and like, and that's not to say all warm bloods. Like
Sure.
there is some, every horse is unique
Yeah.
and different.
Every
And
horse
then
is
also
unique.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of similarities. And I think Mustangs, a lot of people who have worked with Mustangs tell me like they just hold you, like my Appaloosa mare as well.
Mm-hmm.
They just hold you to a different
Yeah.
standard. Like they're
Yeah.
just a little bit more like,
Yeah, but also you're taking something that's not been off the track, not been, brought up in a yard, something that
or
was
have any genetics
right,
previous
right.
of domestication.
You're taking it from the wild.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to trust this wild animal
Mm-hmm.
and gain its trust.
Yes.
To be able to get on its back. Like that's the most predatorial thing anybody could do to a horse is get
Yes.
on their back,
Yes.
right? That's like a major predator.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see how she's able to do that. There is zero whipping, there is zero force involved.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really neat to watch that because it's like, sometimes if you want a bigger step in the piaffe, I'm going to kick him harder. Well, no, it's actually about creating a better balance. All of this is about creating a better balance. Why is the horse lifting one leg high? That's the one thing I'm working on with Zeppelin is that I have, he has a lot of hind end action. And I have been asking, okay, well, I'm going to ask for more hind end action, but then it's throwing him off balance in front. So then there's irregularity and it can be the coolest piaffe step for 3 steps, but you're going to get a 4 if it's irregular. So what I'm learning is to sort of take a step back and be quieter and let him maybe have smaller steps till he finds that regularity so that I can build upon that. And I was like, wow, that's so cool, right? You don't know what you don't know. So you kind of like, you watch and you learn. And that's a little bit like when I watch Elisa work with the Mustangs, they'll tell you when you've gone past the point, and she's so quick about reading that.
Yeah.
And then the next day we start back again, and the next day, and there's not been one that she's not been able to back. And I think it's just incredible because then she takes that and it translates over to her warm bloods, her thoroughbreds, her, Irish horses.
Yeah.
And she brings that world into the eventing world. And I think it's just so admirable.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So in true No Stupid Questions fashion, we have a jar of questions from our community that they wanted to ask you.
Okay.
And I love that we dove into some really good stuff. And now we get to ask some questions.
Ask away.
Okay. You pick, but I'll read because I have chicken scratch for writing.
This one seems long and I'm scared. It looked like there was a lot of writing on that.
Okay. I'm bringing my OTTB, off the track thoroughbred, who was diagnosed with EPM. I want to get him stronger, but I also don't want to stress his system. How do I balance that?
That's a good question. So hopefully EPM is a funny thing because, they can have different stages of it.
Yep.
So I have had horses that have had EPM and then they just live on either, or if they feel like they're having bouts and they go back on the marquee, or rebalance is also a very good, and it's FEI legal. So they can just live on that and it's affordable.
Cool.
So that's really good. With a horse that you're bringing back, honestly, you got to treat it like a horse with any injury, right? So I don't know where this person lives, but hopefully there's access to hill work, right? And so you would if you were starting off, in a workout class, you would take it a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Not going to start off galloping and going hard, maybe walking some hills, and each week you sort of ramp that up. So, and then you read the horse, right? And the thing about EPM horses is you can read for their tripping. A lot of times I find when they're having bouts, they lose weight.
Yeah.
And so that, there's signs that they can tell you if the workload isn't good.
Okay.
But the biggest thing I cannot stress enough is that you never really want the horse to lose that top line, right? So once you get it, you really want to try to, even if it's walking over poles on a lunge line, anything to get them to sort of continue using that, because it's harder, from atrophy to lose that and have to build it back so much more. Yeah. So I would just say to this person to, stress a lot of hill work, pole work, lunging long and low, and just kind of keep, rate and monitor your horse. How is the weight? How is the tripping? Sometimes an injection can go a long way. It's not an injection that, like, I've had some of my APM horses need an SI injection because that's the last thing, the hunter's bump is the last thing to go.
Yeah.
And injecting the SI sort of gives them more confidence in themselves to want to develop that. Right. So sometimes you kind of, you medicate before there's an issue and then you don't need it again because you've developed the horse there. So that's just a different way to think about it.
So when you're building back up, like, do you have I know this is kind of a hard thing to ask, but like, do you have sort of a standard bringing back into work, like, time frame?
That's a really good question. It's really dependent on the horse and if there was an injury,
right?
Or if, so normally I give my horses off in the winter.
Yeah.
So I'll usually pull the shoes for a few months and then I'll bring them, depending on how good footed the horse is. And it usually takes me, like I said, it depends on the horse. So, like, for instance, this year, Lottie had finished she had done 2 years of 3-star. Bringing her back to fitness because she's developed that base was so much easier versus last year or even the year before. She's warm blood horse, right?
Right.
Now my thoroughbreds that have, been fit and off the track and running at, 2, 3, 4 years old, when I get them, their baseline is, I don't ever tap it until really they go 2 or 3 star.
Right.
So they're kind of perennially fit type of deal.
Right.
It really depends on the horse. But like I said, you have to, it's the same with people.
Yeah.
Right. So, like with Lottie, when I brought her back, I brought her back in anticipation coming down here at the end of January. I started riding her in the beginning of December, and it started with, like, hacks out, maybe like 10 to 20 minute trot sets. I wouldn't, if it was just a random horse like on the field, I wouldn't start with a 20-minute trot set, but her baseline has been built because she had just run around a 10.5-minute cross country course in October.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where, like, I would say properly to get your horse back to full potential from, like, either coming from holiday, I would say coming from holiday. It would take me, like, I feel after the second month, my horse is totally, fit. But remember, it depending on what you do, your season is continual, right? And it's progressive. So, like, you don't want to start like, okay, I need my horse 5-star fit in January, right?
Yeah.
Or she's going for, so I don't want her 4-star fit in January because that's what the purpose of the shows are to do. That's the purpose of the training is.
Right.
So, like, I want to have her fit to have a baseline to start work so that she won't have an injury, a soft tissue injury or a bone injury from overexertion. Yeah. So I want to get her basically fit to train for the next level, so there's
that's
steps
such a cool way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I love that you say, like, don't just dive into, like, because I'm even thinking of my own horses. Is there, like, when you navigate giving them time off and then bringing them back in, a 10-minute trot set, that's a lot. 20-minute trot set is a lot.
Yeah, for a horse that doesn't have a baseline. If I get a horse in for training and it's or a young horse that's never started, we start with, like, you can either do like 3 5-minute trots or 2 5-minute trots separated by a walk. It really depends on the horse. Like I said, the blood horses, like, they kind of have a lot of nervous energy, so they almost, that sort of work helps them sort of come to a little meditation, whereas some horses that's not gonna serve them, maybe a hotter blood horse or like a colder blood horse. Yeah. So it really is individualized on the horse. But like I said, my goal was to have my horses in Virginia fit enough to where I could begin rigorous training down here. So there wasn't a ton of rigorous training in Virginia. There was consistent training. Nice. And they had a baseline so that when I came down here, aside from the first month being a little wacky, like, I was able to train and start rigorous work.
I love that.
I wouldn't want to just start the rigorous work in December. Yeah. Right? That's how you create issues.
And how long do you give yourself to establish a foundation for bigger training?
I would say at least a month.
Cool.
Yeah, at least a month.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And what are signs that you look for when a horse is, maybe you're overdoing it?
That's a good question. So the first thing is horses are such mental creatures. Like, they read us so much. So if I have a horse that's beginning to shut down or not like their job, that's a first telltale sign for me to, like, take a step back. Like, you're doing too much. Like, even down here, like, my horses have told me, it's a little bit too rigorous, the training. Okay, next day we go on a hack. Yeah. Right. So that's where, the horsemanship comes into play above the riding. I don't care how much talent you have. If you don't have horsemanship, it goes out the door. So, overstrain, if I can expect after a cross country school or the first cross country school of the year, I'm looking at footing, if the footing's a little hard, I can expect my horse maybe to be a little stingy afterwards.
Yeah.
But if that sting, or if my horse feels discomfort, I watch them in the stall a lot. Are they resting one leg more? Are they pointing a foot? All these things. I also do jog my horses once a week when I'm in full show season. So Mondays are jog days. So I'll usually have someone jog them so I can see. I actually have a journal that I write in every day how my horses worked. The right to left change was a little short behind, or, I felt that there was more chewing, like another sign. My horses aren't very mouthy in the bit, but I know, like, when I do a left half pass with Zeppelin, if he starts to chew, then chances are I'm using too much hand, right? Like, whereas that could be seen as maybe the horse is sore somewhere, so it's always just like, if some of us are lucky enough to have grooms, that's awesome. But if you don't put your hands on your horse after and before you ride the horse, that's no bueno. Like, I'm a firm believer. I don't care, what I have an amazing groom in Melissa Wills back at home. Amazing. But I put my hands on my horse. I like to stretch their legs out before I get on them. And that tells me if they're stretching one leg more than the other. Like, all those things go into a little book in my head that I usually write down just to see if there's any sort of, it's a really good question.
Great. Okay. Next question. Is it true that you can condition a horse at the walk? What would it be like if you had a 5-star eventer and Grand Prix dressage rider coaching you through every ride? What if you could get real-time guidance on mastering your canter, improving your transitions, or conditioning your horse like a pro, all while sitting in the saddle? Well, now you can. With Laine Ashker's guided rides on NF Plus, you don't just listen, you ride alongside Laney as she walks you through the exact exercises she uses to create more balanced, responsive, and confident horses. Struggling with connection? She'll show you how to fix it. Want smoother canter transitions or a more balanced canter? She's got rides for that too. Need a fitness plan that actually works? Learn how to condition your horse for soundness like an upper-level competitor. Looking to improve self-carriage? Her lunging sessions will transform how your horse moves. With 15 immersive rides, there's something for every horse and rider, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned competitor. Sign up for NF Plus and start riding with Laney today. Just hit the link in the show notes or head to noelfloydplus.com. Smarter riding starts here. Tap in, saddle up, and ride with Laney today.
I would think, okay, so I would say, and I am never going to argue with Carl Hester, but Carl Hester is a firm believer in hacking horses before and after the work. So I think it's like a total of an hour of hacking. So they hack every day. I don't think he's doing it on I think if you have the baseline of people working for you to do that, that's probably the ideal situation. But then you also look at what the turnout situation is. I don't know if he turns his horses out or not. So.
I know Carl, well, he has a video on our platform of how he turns all his horses out.
During show season too?
That's a good question. So, he didn't specify, but when we were filming at his place, all the horses were turned out in these like big packs, and some of them were turned out together in pairs. I think
I did see that.
I was like, "That's so cool."
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
So I have heard somewhere, and this could be totally wrong, but the horses. So my eventing horses are turned out at night, and my dressage horses are turned out during the day.
Cool.
So the dressage horses are not as usually like, I want my event horses to walk a lot because I do think that there's a certain amount of condition. I think if you keep an event horse locked up and there's not enough movement, and then you go out and you gallop across uneven terrain, that you're going to ask for a soft tissue injury.
Yeah.
And I think also a lot of walking at night is good for their mental fitness, but also their physical fitness. Because I did hear somewhere that if a horse has enough room, I think I have like at least 3 or 2 acre fields for my horses in Virginia with a little bit of terrain on them. I've heard that horses walk 7 miles a night. They walk like a total.
I have heard also something similar to that.
So, and if they can't, so if you're in a place like Wellington where you don't have the turnout, so I can't turn my horses out at night. Yeah. So they either need to get, like, I will, if it's a day off, I will take them on like a couple mile hand walk.
Yeah.
But you also see people here with like a lot of walkers.
Yes.
A lot of aqua treads, a lot of treadmills.
Yeah.
I do think I don't know if it's like, I'm not getting my horse ready for a 5-star. walking.
Yeah.
But I will create a baseline, and it has to be proper walking, right? Like, if you're on the horse's back, the head shouldn't be straight in the sky, right? The horse should be in a long and low where there's an open throat latch, but their loins are working, right? You don't want to lunge a horse all the time because that's too much circling, but also lunging, walking over poles.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you can absolutely get a horse prepped for work in the walk.
Yeah.
Like I said, it depends on the type of work.
Depends on what you're trying to achieve. But I remember someone telling me that a horse uses all of their muscles, every single one of them at the walk, which is really unique. And then I remember seeing Denny Emerson post. I love his posts. They're fascinating. Yes. He said that they used to, on like 1 or 2 days a week, they would go out on a hack, but on a walk hack, and they would walk that horse for like an hour on hills, across different types of terrain, different types of material, like lots of proprioceptive, all at the working walk. And he talked a lot about working walk.
Right. So it's not like slazy,
like not on the
not
buckle,
running either.
Not on the buckle, but like working, like you are training at the walk, but it's a walk.
There's a lot to be said too. So what I used to do with Al had a Heinz sigmoidian ligament that was always like enlarged, and there was nothing so horses have sesamoid bones behind, and then they have ligaments. They've got a right, left, and a central, and his was a central sesamoidian. So a lot of race horses, I guess it's a common thing in race horses, where the bones from the toil on the track become not arthritic, but like they start to calcify around, and then that puts added pressure on the ligaments. And there's nothing you can do about it. The horse, like, you're never going to like break the horse, but the horse will have some pain in it. So what I would do a lot of, because the worst thing I would never run Al is in really deep footing, right? Because it's not enough solidarity to give stability for those ligaments. So this was something that I learned, competing in UK for a few times. They do a lot of road hacking. And I think the road, even though it's hard, so they're not like trotting or cantering on it, but they're walking. So it's low concussion, but it's stable. Right. So you can walk on a lot of roads, and obviously people yield to you. But I do believe in a certain amount of road walking is really good for the concussion. Right. But also for the stability of the soft tissues. So yeah, I do think you can get your horse relatively working fit in the walk. Absolutely. It's dependent on what you want to do.
Yeah. Okay. You pick the next one.
Okay.
So good, dude. These answers.
Oh, thank you. A lot of years of figuring it out and making mistakes.
What is one simple test to see if your horse is fit enough to get back in the show ring? Like, what's like that one? Yeah, and then this is like, that's kind of like an open-ended question, but to me, so let's break that down.
Okay. Let's
do that for, when do you feel like one of your dressage, when you're ready for the dressage ring versus when you're ready for an event?
So this is interesting. So I run through my eventing tests a few times, but I do more movement based. But like when my dressage horse, I like to run through the tests. I don't do it on a weekly basis, but I will run through the whole test. And if I feel like I don't have to stop in the middle of the test to reschool something, like, and I feel that's consistent, like the zigzag is, I think, everybody's nemesis in the Grand Prix, but it's very difficult in the canter. And so, okay, I'm going off my left. I have 4 steps, 6 steps, 6 steps, 6 steps, 4 steps. And these are all like, half passing to a change. So there's a lot of mental and physical capacity for both the horse and the rider.
Yes.
So I want to be able to go through that fairly fault-free, and keep in mind, that's at home and schooling. So you don't have tension. Right? Your horse isn't nervous because
you're not in
another
a new
horse.
place.
Not in a new place. You're not just trailering in, or you're not stabling in a new place.
Yeah.
You're not nervous as a person. So I feel like for the dressage horses, when I can do that test comfortably, I hate to say the word comfortable because I don't think I've ever felt comfortable in a Grand Prix test, but to where I feel confident that like, okay, I can do this movement and I'm not going to like fall out of it and I have to like repeat that again.
Yes.
So I feel like when the repetition, and I'm able to start from the test from cantering in and halting at X, and then, passaging to G, right? If I can do that, or any level of test, then I think, okay, now let's go and test those skills learned. I also think there's a fair amount of, and I say this for the dressage with a little less stress, but for the eventing, I always like to school a level above. So
cool.
it's hard enough. And for advanced, like, you know, you don't need to jump big things. You just practice mega technical, like crazy angles on the horses. They learn to look for the flags. But I feel like, you know, I always want, and this goes for every facet of riding, whether you're doing eventing or dressage or whatever it is, I would imagine the jumpers and even the Western guys are the same way. You want the show to be review because you have so many outside, you know, extra things that, you know, if a person runs out or a plastic bag rolls by, you don't want to add nerves that your horse is still guessing what you want them to do.
Oh, such a good.
I always tell my students when I'm teaching clinics, I say, I like to see myself as a really, really easy, like, grade school teacher, where when I give my horse a test, on the test the answers are already written. I never want to give my horse a question where it's a 50-50 chance they have to guess.
Yeah.
So like when I'm teaching a young horse narrows, I have wings, right? I put wings on there. So the horse only knows, oh, okay, that's the answer. I got to go through here.
Nice.
Right? I take it really slow.
Yeah.
And then when I finally am able to go and jump a 4-star skinny with Lottie, it's because the years that I've done explaining to her, all right, now look for this, now look for this, now look for this. But it's been very
She's not
clear.
guessing.
She's not guessing. Right. That's the whole, I think that's what makes the best horsemen across the table, no matter what the discipline is, because they only provide their horse with answers. So the horse, how can you have harmony if there's confusion, right? The horse is never confused because they're like, oh, okay, we've done this many times, right? I'm not doing a Hail
And that's
Mary.
what makes a confident horse.
Right.
That's when you watch the horses that we all admire, the ones that are like, like, I got this.
Right.
You can see confusion in their eye.
Yes.
You really can.
Well, you can, and through tension and blah, 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 you know, like, and there's always a place to start, right? So like, that's where you got to give yourself grace because there's always a first time, like moving my horse up to advanced level.
Yeah.
Okay. I've done this question many times, but have I done this question in cohesion with all the other questions? No.
Yes.
So, right, my job is to put the questions together at home, right, and practice them so that nothing is a question. But then every now and then you might get called out because, okay, I've seen that question, but I didn't see that question after that question, right?
Yes,
or maybe I'm a little mentally tired because there's a lot of questions in a row. So you always want to like take that into account, right? And you will know as a rider, and I, you know, did this horse refuse or did this horse stop in the piaffe because it was totally confused and now I've overfaced it and I got to go back? Or was it just an honest mistake? Right. And that's a very blurry line that we as really good horsemen have to, I always try to err on the side of caution and step back and review. But there's also times where just horse didn't see the jump. All right, come back, present it. I jumped it. Right. So it's just a matter of being a really good horse person and reading your horse and knowing your horse.
It reminds me of, I've had a couple lessons with Karen Rolfe, who she comes from the world of dressage, but she also dove deep into the relationship-based work, like the natural horsemanship world. And she's really cool. She presented something that no one had ever presented to me before, which she said, when you do a session when you're doing a training session with your horse of any kind, are you doing something to learn it? Are you trying something new? And in which case you're like, okay, this is a day of learning. This is a day where we're not going to get it perfect because we're presenting a new idea and we're going to present all the different answers and then we're going to reward the right answers. Yes. Compared to or versus, okay, this is a skill that we've been practicing. Yeah. Today we're going to try to get the very best. Like she's like, if you were to give yourself a grade on the report card. Yep. Let's try to get as close to an A+ as you can.
I really like that.
And I loved that because you kind of come in with a mindset of like, okay, we're going to try to do this to an A+ ability today because we like set it all up to be like, we're learning. Today we're learning. We're going to get a little bit closer to the right answer. And today we got like 5 out of 10 of the right answers, to the point where you're graduating to a place of like, okay, today we're going to do this skill to the very best of our ability. And we're going to continue. We're going to ask until we feel like we got like an A+ answer. And I really loved that, like 2 different training mindsets that kind of belong together.
For sure. Yeah. And I totally agree with that. And I guess I do that like whenever I introduce, okay, half pass to a horse. I never start it in the trot. I don't just like, okay, we're going to canter half pass today. No, we break it down. We start with the travers, right? And we should also know how to do shoulder in and renvers. And then we go travers, and then we go travers on the diagonal, and we do it all on the walk first. And you don't go to the trot or the canter until the walk is good.
Yeah.
Because and it's like, that's the day I usually come out. I was actually thinking about this, and I know I've talked about this in the guided rides before, is set an intention when you come out. Like today, my goal on my horse, my intention was, I think I did a warm up, like walk, trot, canter, but my intention was to work on regular and off with little to no effort on my part. I didn't want to have a lot of leg. I just wanted to do maybe a little use of my voice, right? And then have like 5 or 6 steps and then walk, pet. And then if I just asked it again. And I think it's easy, and I know I'm guilty. Oh, I've got a show next week. I got to run through everything every single day. And then the horses and the riders get really mentally like, I'm exhausted, you know? And so like tomorrow, my goal is to work on canter halts. Cause I never do, like I'll do it in the test. My horse is great at squaring up, but I've got mirrors down here. So tomorrow, my intention after my warm up is to do work on canter halts on both leads.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that where the guided rides are great because they help people, but because they help people set that intention.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy, like you were saying before, to get lost. But what is my goal? What do I need to do? And you got to make it almost that simple.
Yes.
You're riding an animal that's smart, but the brain is small and it's smaller. So if you can't,
and it's different to our brain.
Yes, it's a flight or fright, right? Or fight or flight.
Yeah,
it's a prey animal. So you can't throw 1,000 things at once at it, right? You want to think of trying. Okay, like I said, you can cover the bases of the warm up, but like when I'm doing intense training, I'm hyper focused on one thing. And honestly, it could be a ride that is 10 minutes. And when my horse gets it, we're putting you away. Like it doesn't need to be, I don't need to put my stopwatch on and be like, okay, an hour, I'm staying an hour. No, I think I rarely work my horses in the dressage ring over 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes.
Cool.
You know, and that's with breaks.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's anything to gain from making them tired and then not looking forward to it. Right.
Also, something that's really interesting bringing the neuroscience into it is horses have a part of their brain that's actually very large. I think it's called the thalamus. That's they have a much stronger ability than we do to recognize patterns. It's why they're good with us at doing a lot of this stuff. So if you're consistent, they actually pick up on patterns. That's actually one of their survival. It's like one of the evolutionary survival elements to the species is that they're actually very quick to recognize patterns. Right. So both good ones and bad ones. So there is so much truth in repetition. But if you present it correctly, I've come to learn, diving more into the neuroscience, that they actually don't need as much repetition as you think. Sometimes we're repeating for us. Right. Not for them.
I think that's probably most of the time.
Yeah. I know I'm guilty of that.
Yes, I am definitely guilty of that.
Okay. Next question. Ooh, this is a big one.
Oh, this looks like I'm scared again.
Can you share an inspiring transformation story? Maybe a horse that struggled and turned out right in the right program. And I think I remember writing this question. It was like talking about a fitness transformation. So a horse that maybe like benefited from a fitness, something like a curated program or a fitness program that was a bit of a really cool before and after.
As far as fitness goes, like, I mean, I get a lot of horses in that, I think to that point of what we talked about repetition, I think, and I'm going to be biased by saying this, but I think horses flourish more in a program where there's consistent riding, fair riding. It's not like, hard, but I do think horses, like my horses, when I'm at home in Virginia, they get lunged every Tuesday. Tuesday's lunge day. And, Wednesday will be something else, and Thursday and blah, blah, blah. And we supplement hack days in there. Cool. I do think horses really do well with programs. So I get a lot of horses that have not been in a program. And I had one, for instance, this was a long time ago. It was a Cleveland Bay horse that the people wanted to see what it could do. Didn't really jump a lot. And he ended up leaving at the end of the summer because that was the goal, was to get him. I ended up going from like The thing had never competed and did a novice level, but it was honestly, the horse flourished because it went from being ridden like once a week or once every other week
Right.
to being ridden 5 days a week. And so not only did he physically look better, like he was always a little bit of a lazier horse for the people to ride because he kind of would be unmotivated, but it also made him way more motivated to work because he was being worked.
Cool.
And so he came out wanting to work. Yeah. So physically and mentally, I think it's kind of like people, you know, like I would, if I sat all day and watched, you know, TV shows, I wouldn't feel very fulfilled in my day. And I know horses don't have the same comprehension that we do, but I also feel that horses, you know, especially that we have them domesticated, they do genuinely like to be around people and have that interaction and create, and they're relationship based animals.
Yes.
Right. So creating that relationship is huge. So I know I'm not really answering that question too, but I would.
I like it though. I like
yeah,
where
I mean,
you're going with it.
I mean, I don't really have a standout horse. I mean, like I've had horses that have had EPM that came to me not very sound because they didn't have any muscle structure. And so I put a few months, 3 months, 4 months of, you know, conditioning work, lunging work, stretching work, and then the horse is sound and competing, you know, like those are cool stories.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't had any, I mean, all the ones that I've taken to 5-star have been horses that I've had for such a long time, you know, or had from such a young age. So their conditioning has always just, anybody that's ridden them has been me. So I know them from the ground up. But I think there's a lot to be said about, you know, the transformation comes from, it's not like a shoe that you shine. It's literally something that you start and you transform over a very long period of time. Nothing is overnight in horses, but really nothing successful happens overnight either. And I love, there's a quote that Drake says that it took many years to become an overnight success.
Yes.
And it's the same thing whether you're, you know, having success in riding, acting, music, conditioning.
Yeah.
Right. It takes, there's so many years that are involved, and sometimes it's months for bringing a horse back from, you know, from an injury. Yeah. I'd probably say, actually, let me talk about this. My 4-star horse, call him Patty, thoroughbred. He is a comeback kid twice over. So the horse was going 3-star, and after a 3-star, he didn't jog great. Like it would have passed the lameness eval, but something felt funny. And I ended up finding out that he had, you know, and he had always had a splint, but the splint was refractured. So he had this major surgery from Dean Richardson, who's a legend and who was Barbaro's vet basically at New Bolton, and the horse had water recovery, and he ended up coming back to 3-star, eventually 4-star. And then in his 4-star year, the horse did a like career ending suspensory. And it was a low suspensory. And the way like this horse jumps is like an incredible jumper. Like he's hard on himself because he jumps so well. And it broke my heart because this was like an Olympic horse for me. It was such an average, like my mom paid nothing for it off the California track, no good breeding, but the horse and I had a relationship. So I really wanted him. This was my dream to have Patty take me around Burley, and he had the heart to do it. But this was a career-ending injury. So I basically, like, I didn't just throw him out because he needed a job, but I kind of just, like, took all the pressure off. I just would, like, brush him. And there was no, like, major rehab that I did except time. And then eventually I did do some PRP and stuff. And then, you know, I would scan it. But after, like, it was 3 years of just, like, I taught him how to neck rope and bareback. And I kind of took all the pressure off of ever competing him again.
Yeah.
And I just enjoyed, like, he was as I'm never going to get rid of the horse, because it's like my best friend. I just taught him things like I started doing tempi changes, like things after he had a buildup of endurance that I could start doing. And like he did them great. Like before it took me forever to get him to do the changes. It took me so long to teach him changes. And then we were doing tempis and teaching him pirouettes. And then I was like, you know, we got him scanned, and the scan started looking really miraculous. And so I took him to an event, and then I took him to another event. And then like pretty soon he was entered in intermediate, and it was before that intermediate because I know the horse so well. I was like, you know what? I am training him to go back to 5-star, and he's not like, he's never going to physically hold up for that. Can he do intermediate? Probably 3-star. Yeah. But my goal is not intermediate and 3-star.
Yeah.
So it was a big self-reflection moment last year. Because I would never want to, like, I already know the outcome if I try to push him to the top and I'm going to break him. Yeah. And I don't, like, every horse has a risk of breaking, just like people do. Yeah. But I don't want to knowingly put him in that position, knowing that he already has this issue. So I called one of my best friends up who is a really hard worker, has not had opportunities. And I was like, do you want to take on the ride, Patrick? And it's a lot of pressure for her, but she's taken the horse on. She's going training level next weekend. Wow. And it's a horse, like, I feel very comfortable that she can take the horse up to 2-star, like do her first 2-star. Yeah. And maybe do an intermediate. Yeah. And like I said, there's a risk to all of that, but the pressure that she's putting on him to train, she's in a learning pattern. Yeah. She's enjoying every ride to do her first half pass on this horse. Yeah. Whereas I am like, okay, we're going to get this half pass, like, because I already know you've done it. Now we got to do these changes and I need you to sit more. And I just felt a little dirty if I was going to do that. And I don't want to feel that way. So that is probably my most favorite story. Yeah. Coming with a horse that, like, career ending, like, he had a 5% chance of like jumping ever again. Wow. And I just kind of took any pressure of, like, because back then when he got hurt, I was like, okay, we're going to gear up for a 5-star. And I took all those away and I let time and love and ice, a lot of ice, heal the horse. Time, love, and ice. Time, love, and ice, heal the horse. And just enjoyed him as a horse. And then after that happened, you know, I was able to compete him again. And it was so soul feeding to be able to compete him because he's my favorite cross country horse. Yeah. But then there's a time where and that's just being knowing your horse. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is where I've done my job. He's got a great baseline and now he needs to go teach somebody, because I do need to learn, but I need to learn at the 5-star level. Yeah. Right. And it would not be right to take him and try to do that because for sure he would break. So
I think that's an awesome story.
Yeah. I'm glad I jogged my memory on that.
Yeah, me too.
It's a good one. Hopefully, I don't think this one is as long. We'll see.
It's long.
Oh, crap. That's okay. I got you.
But this is good. I don't have access to hills or track.
Okay.
Only an arena, trails, and a round pen. How do I get my horse fit again for some beginner level events in a way that is effective?
Trails. She just said it right there.
Yeah.
Like, okay, round pen is fine.
Yeah.
Arena work, great for cavaletti.
Yeah.
So the trails. So my mom, I'm going to go back to my mom, who's a legend in finding my off the track thoroughbreds. Yeah. My mom will get a horse. This was back when she was in California and she lived on massive hills, but she would get these horses off the track that were race fit and she would take them on one trail ride and they were drenched in sweat. There was a multitude of reasons why they were drenched in sweat, because they're not used to using those muscles. They're not used to using those brain muscles of like, oh, there's a rock on the ground. I better lift my foot up. Right. It's also nerve wracking because they're outside of an enclosed environment, right? So there's a lot of things being worked with not a lot of poundage or concussion. Yeah. So to that, an answer to that question is 1,000% the trails, trot sets, getting your horse ready. I think putting a horse in an environment where they have to think for themselves is not just physical fitness, but huge mental fitness. Because as an event horse, you want the horse to be able to be like, okay, this is a really bad distance. No problem. I got you. Like, and you want the horse to be able to think for themselves. The horse can't think for themselves when we get hurt. Yeah. Right. And if they depend on the rider, because we're always going to do something wrong. In essence, the horse probably needs to be a little smarter than the rider. Right. But they have to think on their own. And they do that through being outside of an enclosed, secure environment. Right. So, like I said, sure, use the arena and use the round pen for your lunging work or use the arena for your pole work. But when it comes to like really good, proper fitness, a 20-minute trot set will do so much for not just the rider's fitness or not just the horse's fitness, but the rider's fitness.
Yes.
So when I tell people, like, I have a thing like going novice level and training level, and this really depends on the breed, but I like my horses doing 20 minutes of trotting nonstop, right? And people are like, oh my God. And then, well, what do you do with prelim? Well, they're doing 30 minutes. What do you do intermediate? Depends on the horse. Like Lottie would do a 40-minute trot, but my thoroughbreds will do 30. When I'm going advanced, they're doing 40 to 50-minute trots. I am not stopping. I have a great iPod playlist. So, and I like, that is what I'm just jamming to that. Right. But the Bruce Davidson always told me, I will never forget it. You will never break a horse trotting. And he's right. You're never going to break a horse trotting. You will break a horse galloping. You'll break a horse jumping. Yeah. Right. Stopping, hard stops, but trotting, that concussion, that even concussion on the horse. Yeah. Right. It's like jogging for us. Right. Yeah. If you're sprinting, you might do something. You could
work your way up to
it. But you go, if you're just jogging a light jog, that's very healthy. It's healthy for the joints to work that way. It's a healthy amount of concussion. So I would say focus a lot on the trail work that will do a lot for the horse's physical fitness, but the horse's mental fitness and their relationship, especially wanting to do eventing. If you're asking your horse to go through a mud pit and they don't want to do it, well, they're definitely not going to go through the water hazard of the show. Yeah. Right. So it just builds that relationship and that trust between the two.
It also makes me think of, do you ever come across someone that says, oh, I'm just a trail rider?
Yes.
It's a really common thing. I've heard it a lot on this trip.
Right.
Oh, I'm just a trail rider. And I say, what kind of riding do you? Oh, I'm just a trail rider. Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm going, I feel like everyone who's just a trail rider needs to hear this.
Yeah, for sure.
Because one, I think is really cool. Because one, it sounds like there's a lot of cool conditioning work and riding work that you can actually do on the trails. Yes. That riders who are listening to this, who are just trail riders, should like feel empowered to work on your transitions, work on some trot work when you're on the trails. This is like a really beneficial to your horse.
Yep, because then if you can have your horse's attention in a place where it's always grabbing his attention, well, then you've done a lot of training right there.
Yeah.
Right.
But it just that piece, like as you were talking, I was like, yeah, that makes me think that for everyone who describes themselves as just trail riders, maybe what they're doing is actually much more enriching for their horsemanship than, and for their ridership, as you can call it, like than they think.
Well, my mom calls herself just a trail rider, and she's like, but yet like it's helped so much because my mom will go anywhere and everywhere with her horses. Yeah. So like their footwork in a grid, because they've done so many trails, is like uncanny good. Like, and they trust her, because when she asks them to jump the jump, they're like, well, you did ask me to go through that ravine a few days ago, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try it. So there's a lot being built upon trail riding, right? And it's not just like, you know, a pathway that is footing, you know, like a proper trail ride, like go on the trail, have some hills, or have some, like, you know, this gal said she didn't have hills, but I'm sure there's going to be some sort of terrain, like some sort of like, you know, something that the horse is going to look and gawk at, right? And that just is only building the relationship between the horse and rider. So.
God, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love trail riding. So.
Me too. Yeah. Have you ever made a fitness mistake, either undertraining or overtraining? What did you do and how did you remedy it?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think we've all made those mistakes. That's how we become better. I think probably knowing me, I think the example of just being down here and feeling the pressure of wanting to show, I think I made that mistake of overtraining my horses and not taking a day off. The horses got the day off, but like, I think it's something to be said. If you are not coming at 100% capacity, then you can't expect the horse to. So I think that overtraining for the rider, and it's such, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. It's so easy to feel this guilt because you're not at the barn. Even if I'm not riding, I got to like magnum wave the horses, or I got to groom them. And it's like, no, the horses don't want to see you today. Like, take a chill, girl. Like,
leave them alone.
Yeah. Like there's mental health for both people and horses. Like they need their mental health to just like chill and be in the field and roll in the sand. Yes. And I need my mental health to become a better person and a better horse person and a better trainer and a coach.
Like go to a yoga class or go for a walk.
Exactly. There's a lot to be said about doing that. So I think there's not a specific time that I feel like I've overtrained or undertrained. I mean, sure, I feel like, you know, it's funny because coming down here and coming in where I felt like underprepared to go to the World Cup, but I also over-prepared to go. Like, I gave my horse a girth rub because I was trying to remedy the back of the skin falling off so I could train. Whereas maybe if I would have just I don't know. It's easier said than done, because then I felt like I had undertrained because I didn't feel prepared to be there.
Yeah.
I think it really, if I have to err on one direction, I think less is always more. But it's easier for me to say that
than to do
hindsight than to do it.
Yeah, I totally relate to that.
You always feel like you're behind the mark, or I feel like I'm behind the mark, and like I'm being lazy if I don't ice my horse another time for 20 minutes. And I think, okay, if your horse actually needs the icing, great. But to do something to just do something is only just wasting time. It's not working smarter. It's working harder and worse. And it's doing, staying at the barn till crazy hours and then having to wake up crazy early. Like I've had to really monitor my workout schedule, because my own fitness is important to me.
Yeah.
But if I'm coming exhausted to the barn, I'm no good to the horses. So maybe I need to rework my fitness regimen to after the barn.
Yeah.
So I'm not coming to the barn physically exhausted because I've lifted all these weights and run 3 miles. You know what I'm saying? And feeling like, oh, I just got to get through the day. That's not how you should approach horses anytime, right? I never want to look at my watch unless I'm timing a trot set or an icing session.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that's pretty common in sort of going back to that balance.
Yes.
And there's a balance in horses' movement. There's a balance in horses' training. There's a balance in feed. And we're constantly learning from that. Like, coming down here, I know to give my horses extra electrolytes because they're going to be sweating a lot more. Yeah. Right. And I learned that from not doing it. Right. And my horse is not drinking enough. Like you always have to be open to learning, and horses teach us so much. And when you feel like you've learned something, guess what? There's another path of you're going to learn something different, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like, I feel like if you underprepare, your probably next thing is going to be that you overprepare. Yes. And when you overprepare, you're going to maybe do a little less, whichever way you go, and you're going to find that equilibrium. You're going to find that middle ground at some point, and the horse will tell you, and you'll know. But that's literally our whole life, is figuring out how much preparing do we have to do to make it to where you're not stressed and the horse is tired and sore, or the horse doesn't know the answers to the questions.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I love in that whole statement? Okay. This is a really important one, I think, for all of us. And I'm going to say this to myself first. We often judge ourselves when we get it wrong. But you need to get it wrong to get it right.
Amen. Preach to that. Yeah.
And I think sometimes forget to tell myself that.
Me too.
And I feel like when we talk about this perception of being judged, and I feel like so many people I've talked to, so many women I've talked to in the horse world are like, I feel like everyone at my barn is judging me. If I make a mistake, everyone's sitting there going, oh, like she's really messing up. One, I love the permission slip you have of like, they're probably not really thinking about you.
They don't care.
Yeah. Like they're working on their own stuff.
Yes.
And they're worried and they're insecure about their own things.
Yes.
Two, and like I talked about this with Casey too, like we're all just trying our hardest,
right.
And everyone's like messing up somewhere. Right. But you have to often feel like in horses, this is so true. And it's taken me like 30 years plus to figure this out, is like, you have to get it wrong. You have to like liberate yourself to try and fail and try and fail, and then get it a little, like fail a little less, to figure out where these, like, to find those fine balances. Like the reason why all the greats are older,
right?
Like all the masters are masters because they have a lifetime of mistakes that they then impart on the rest of us.
Well, and even if you have someone that is a genius at whatever the sport is, there's gonna be a peak and a valley. The skill has got to catch up to the genius
inevitably
level. It just happens, right? So failing forward, or what Michael Jordan said, I can't remember what the quote is, but like missed the shot 25 times. I don't know. It's something, it was like a quote like that.
Well, like a shot missed is better than shot not taken. Those types of quotes of like, it's better to take the shot and miss it than never take the shot and wonder.
But if you're always doing it right, you'll never know what the wrong part is. And I think there's a way, like every time I train, you don't want to stay in your comfort zone. There's no progress in comfort zone, right? So you have to push that boundary, so that your comfort zone gets and you might make mistakes. I know I've made so many mistakes in teaching of like, okay, this is cool. So I learned this from Buck. I teach a lot of clinics, a lot. And
Yeah.
when I was first, I remember there was a clinic from hell, and I can't believe they still invited me back, but it was in California. And I had the first day I was a hero, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's the best jump clinic. And so, okay, I was like, I'm going to make it harder the next day because we've learned. And everybody fell off. I mean, it was like, they were falling like flies. And I was just like, oh my God, I left with my tail between my legs, and I went back to Buck, and I was like, I don't understand it. The first day was amazing. The second day, everybody's like, Laney, you're treating these people like they're in your program right now, or like how you're training. But you forget some people do this on the weekend. So they were physically probably really tired. And the horses were probably really tired.
After a good,
after
you had a really
like
good,
a butt kicking, right? And he's like, you always should it's not the second day needs to be easier, but it should be more review. And I was like,
cool.
Wow, I learned so much, but I wouldn't have known that if I wouldn't have made the mistake, right?
Totally.
Like, or and then there's people always want to be challenged, but then there's a fine line between over challenging. But that's how we learn. And at anything, I don't care if you're a businessman, if you're a swimmer like Michael Phelps. I use Michael Phelps because I think he's
pretty
God.
iconic.
Yes. But just, anybody that's really great, and your comfort zone should never be a zone. It should be like a little room that you stay in, that you're opening a door and going to the next comfort zone, and then you're going to the next comfort zone. So you're constantly opening and closing doors.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then honestly, you're not doing it right. You gotta, and when in the process of failing or finding that new comfort zone, you're gonna make mistakes to know, okay, this is how I make this better, or this is how I make this better, and so that's where I think most elite athletes understand that and probably give themselves grace. Okay, well, that didn't work, let's try this method, or let's try this method but maybe pull it back a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And sometimes I wonder if that mentality is one of the big defining differences between a professional and an amateur.
I think so.
Is that actually professionals are like, no, like, I know this might not go that well, and I'm going to do the very best that I can. And then I will review and assess and observe and analyze, and then I will do better.
And I think that's what makes the best professionals the best, because I know as a professional wanting to be the best, still not the best. And I think the best is kind of I look at the Formula One drivers, unless you're Max Verstappen, you're not the best all the time, right? Yeah. But I think that is that feeling. I think mental prowess is a constant work in progress. Yeah. I don't think even Mickey Young goes to himself and says, oh, I did this right. I'm sure he says, wow, I messed up on this. Okay, let me go back. And when you say that, second guessing is the devil. But I think the best athletes are the ones that can do that. But it, like, for me, when I second guess myself, it's questioning everything, and it sets me back. I think second guessing it's the devil, but it's healthy because you're taking responsibility.
Yeah.
But it's the people that use that second guessing to like make their truth more formidable than the people that like second guess. I'm kind of guilty of that, and be like, oh, well, then everything's wrong. It's all wrong, right?
Yeah.
And that makes you take a step back as an athlete, right? And also takes your confidence away as a human being. But I don't think anybody has been as born. I'm sure even Max Verstappen has lost some races, and he has. And when he does, he watches those and he learns from that. But I think everybody that is really good at what they do, I'm sure that amount of second guessing, like, they've learned how to hone it in and use it to a positive to make them a better athlete. And that's what I think separates. There's a lot of great athletes, but the elite, the top 1%.
Yeah.
And we're all trying to learn that. So still out there trying to learn
Love
that.
Love it. Okay, one more question, and then we'll do rapid fire.
I'm going to go like at
all
the
way to the bottom.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. Drum roll, last question.
Here we go.
Take us back to a time when you realized fitness was a missing piece for a horse's success. What happened and what did you learn?
Okay, well, I've got a funny story when you first said fitness, because I went to rider fitness, and I remember
you could actually do rider fitness too.
I think in horse world, we're all very late to the game of fitness. So when you see the Olympic opening ceremony, you're looking at the swimmers, first of all, there's youth, right? But then you see the riders and they're like, what's going on with these guys. I am old enough to have done the very last long format 5-star, but I'm young enough, and I'm also old enough to have done the very first short format.
Yep.
But I'm young enough to have been in the wave of like of fitness matters as a rider. Because when I was growing up, chain smoking, you know, like cigarettes and drinking, the drinking. I mean, the riding hungover. Never thinking about a treadmill or lifting weights. Are you kidding me? Because we did the barn.
Like I'm barn fit,
right? Which is a thing, but also it's to be really good at what you want to do. Yeah. You got to it's like the food that we eat, right? And I grew up like the Doug Paynes. Doug used to run marathons everywhere. Like, you know, I've always been a pretty physically active person outside. I've done like CrossFit, and I did Tough Mudders, and now I do Orange Theory. I'm totally in the cult.
Yeah.
But I remember my first overseas event was Blenheim, and I was 18 years old, and I was very like so excited to be over there. And I'd been to UK when I was young, but I didn't remember. And I was there with my horse, my off the track thoroughbred, and we're in the riders meeting, and two people that are legends that I adore and they're iconic. I sat there while we're in the writers meeting and I watched them go through 2 packs of cigarettes. And I'm like, 2 packs of cigarettes. Okay.
Whoa.
It was like a 45-minute. I mean, I don't know how, first of all, I came from California where smoking is not allowed anywhere, not even in your backyard.
Yeah.
And then I go to, I moved out to Virginia, which is tobacco, but it wasn't you're still not smoking in the hotel rooms. And then I go to the riders meeting and I was like, I think I got secondhand smoke. I mean, I was like needed to get a screening for lung cancer in there. And I just was like, wow, these guys are like really incredible legends. But it's like that fitness part was not important. I think the reason why, especially one of these riders is still doing 5-star and is kicking everybody's ass, is I think she's now, like, I don't think she smokes anymore. And I think but it was a time in that that was a time frame where people, that was an era. It was an era. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to come to the next era where I was like, wait a second, we actually do need to, if we're taking that much care of our horses, we probably need to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
So it's really important to me to have like I shouldn't say clean, because there's still times where I'll grab a bag of chips when I'm driving, the 17 hours down to Florida. But for the most part, I want to eat as whole and healthy as I can, just like I want to treat how my horses to eat.
Right.
And I want to also be, if I'm expected to run across the country and, drop down banks that are 7 feet, I don't want to have to fall forward on my horse. I want to have the strength and the fortitude that I've built from being in the gym, from running, my endurance, to be able to be an equal partner. Before, I think also people wore weights, especially in the cross country. Women had to wear weights so that it was an even amount of weight on the horse. But it didn't bode well for like physical fitness for the rider. Just stick some weights in. Now it's like, I want to be the lightest I can, but I want to be the fittest I can. I don't want to be a waif to where I'm going to just fly off my horse and I can't control my horse. But I want to be strong to be a equal partner to the horse, right? So yeah, that's where my mind went, as I think, physical fitness I think the horse world is the latest to catch on to that, because everybody says, the horse is doing everything. Not true, as we both know as riders and as everybody that's watching this, but it's easy to have that perception.
Yes.
Because, we're not the youngest on the Olympic team. It's most of the time the oldest, right? And, I think the Lily Keenans now, and I think the younger youth, I think they do other things aside from just riding horses.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
We also do ride 10 horses a day too, which also makes you fit. But there's an extra additive to if you want to be the best, you got to make yourself different from everybody else, right? And the physical and the nutrition is huge about that. So
I love it. Yeah. So at the end of every episode, I ask riders the same rapid fire questions. Okay. I'm very excited to hear your ones.
All right.
If you could read one book to the horse world, what would it be?
One book. It's supposed to be rapid fire. Mind Gym by Gary Mack.
Ooh, good.
I'm big into like mental preparedness.
Yeah.
So that's a great book that's gotten me through a lot of like trials and tribulations.
Love that.
Yeah.
Who is the most iconic horse in history?
Oh, that's such a hard question. Oh, man. Okay. I would say in the dressage world, probably Vallegro. He set a big standard.
Sure.
I would say my mind goes to Jem Twist because he was a thoroughbred in the jumper world.
Yep.
So I think he set a huge precedent for thoroughbreds. And then I would say, gosh, there's so many good horses in eventing, horses that I would want to ride too. But I would probably say one of my favorite horses to ever watch go across country was Murphy himself, ridden by Ian Stark, who had zero control. He will even tell you this. He never had any control, and the horse just like made his own distances out of everything.
Really?
And there's this one famous, I don't know where he was. It was a two-stride and the horse bounced it. And like you normally would be like, oh, that's dangerous riding. It wasn't. Ian was in the back seat and the horse just said, I'm doing this. And it's just such a sheer athleticism and mental, like that horse knew exactly what he was doing. And I named all my Breyer horses after him because I just was like, this is so, I would probably never want to ride that horse because I would be like, yeah, he'd be like way too strong for me. But it was really always fun to watch him combat all the different like cross countries.
That's a really cool answer. Most undervalued skill as a rider?
Discipline. I think discipline. I think way more than talent. And I would voucher that every rider probably says that, like discipline way more than talent. I'm not the world's most talented rider, but I show up every day and it's important to me to be better and better every day. And I'm a listener. When I go to watch, I like to audit a lot. I'm not on my phone. If I'm on my phone, I'm taking notes, but usually I like to bring a pen and paper because I don't want my phone to be a distraction.
Nice.
I'm a student. I think being a student of whatever discipline that you want to be in. And a student doesn't mean just like, oh, showing up. It's like really trying to learn it and study it and appreciate it. I think that will get you way further than just having the sheer talent.
Who is the greatest horseman or horsewoman in history?
Gosh, this is such a hard answer.
Who's the first person that comes to mind?
Well, there's so many good people. I always go to like the Davidsons or the O'Connors just because, but there's so many people that like, I think of Carol Lavelle riding a horse called Gifted. And there's people today that are amazing riders. I think Catherine Dufour is a very good rider really listens to her horses. I think Carl Hester is probably up there. But like the old school me, just seeing the different types of horses that Bruce Davidson would ride. I also think Boyd and Phil have a place in that, you know, and in the jumper world, I don't know. You just have so many. Margie Angle, who's still out there riding the 5-stars.
She's riding tonight.
I mean, and on a horse. Okay, she's like 2 feet. She's not really 2 feet, but she's like 5 foot.
She's very little.
She's very little. And petite, tiny lady. And the horse is 18.3. And what's cool is if you look on the 5-star roster, because I always like to say, they say the partnership, and it's over 8 years. Yeah. And I think that just like all my respect. I hope she kicks butt tonight. Yeah. But she's so small. So that says a lot about her. Like Roz Cantor is another one. Yes. That can ride really big horses. Yeah. But her touch and her finesse and how she teaches the horses, it could be a fly on them and they would feel it because I mean the training is just second to none. Yeah. So I said a lot. I love it.
Everyone's gonna be looking, Googling.
Yeah, like, they're all incredible horsemen. So
okay, and final question. Mares, geldings, or stallions?
Oh, I think I've had most of my success on geldings, but I've had my greatest love affairs with a mare. So, and the mare that I currently have now is really special to me, and she's bred to do jumpers. I think she goes because she trusts me, and she like I love my geldings, but I feel loved by a mare. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Like you can feel hated by a mare too. Oh yeah. But like the geldings, they love you. They love you. But the mare, if you feel that she loves you, she'll go to the end of the earth for you. I've ridden stallions too, but I have most of my experience on geldings and mares, and I've had my greatest loves with mares. So
thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. That was a lot of fun.
That was so much fun.
Yeah, good times.